annual quarterly meeting of the JCHA. I'm Kelly Goodall, and despite what you might read in the paper, I'm the current reigning president of the JCHA. We're going to have a retraction for the paper pretty soon. Anyway, as Steve Harvey says on Family Feud, we got to do it tonight. So let's get started. We're going to have a short business meeting. Real quick, and we'll get over with it, but we've got to do it. First, we'll hear from our secretary who'll give us minutes from the last meeting. This is the woman who put the high in Ohio, Susan Fisher.
Yes, I should say thank you. The Jackson County Historic Association quarterly meeting was called to order by President Jen Stewart at Page School on January 25th. Ann Chambliss announced proposed state new officers for 2015. Kelly Goodowens for president, Reed Henshaw for vice president, Susan Fisher for secretary, and Jen Stewart for treasurer. Advisors are John Graham, Patrick Stewart, and Ann Chambliss. There were no additional nominations from the floor, and the proposed slate was approved by the membership. Susan Fisher presented a gift from the association to Jen Stewart, the outgoing president. Kelly Goodowens introduced Judge John Graham, who presented an audio-video presentation entitled The Seven Wonders of Jackson County. Following the program, 150 people enjoyed the association's 40th birthday cake. Respectfully submitted, Susan Fisher, Secretary.
Any corrections, additions, changes to minutes? Nothing will be accepted as read. We now will introduce the financial report, and our treasurer, former Miss Stevenson, after Pt.2, Janine Stewart.
66.
Oh, sorry, 82.
66. For the first quarter of this year, which begins in February and runs through April, we're kind of off from the rest of the world. The beginning balance was $8,623.
Whoa.
Wow. And 52 cents. Yes, I forgot that like it. The income for this year was $1,511.10. Expenses were $1,509.42, and our ending balance was $8,625.20.
I knew this place was haunted, and I know for sure. I'm going to give us a quick report on the actual fund for the depot here. I'm in charge of that. Current balance is $15,498.53. Was recently sent in my last report for the Vinyl Foundation grant which we got. And out of that grant, we were able to build a new building out back. We're able to build these 4 new display cabinets here. We're able to buy a projector so we can have more presentations, and we're also able to buy a new computer. So we thank the Vinyl Foundation very much for their support. We're going to be going back late 15th asking for some more. Speaking of CDs, we don't have any CDs. I have an old ACDC tape, 8-track tape. Okay, all right, here we go. Introduce our guest speaker, program chairman, Reed. Call me anything, but don't call me late for supper. Inshallah.
Thank you. I'm not going to use the microphone, so I'm not going to talk that long. I had a nice little introduction written out, and then I read the last issue of the Chronicles and realized kind of what I was going to say was in there. Then I read the newspaper Friday, Saturday, and saw the other half of what it was going to say. About y'all taking care of that. Our guest today.
I guess everybody's wondering why I passed out the original Siamese twins. Wondering how this relates to the Civil War. This is Chang and Ing Bunker. And they were the original Siamese twins that I believe traveled around with the Ringling Brothers. Well, they amassed a small fortune doing it. And in 1839, ended up buying 131 acres of Blue Ridge Mountains in North Carolina and married sisters, not two sisters, just some sisters. And they had a family. Well, in the spring of 1865, the Civil War was coming to an end. General George Stoneman came through and sacked the county and the city in which they lived and made a lottery. And it didn't matter what your sympathies were, if you were a union or Confederate, you were going to fight for the union. And they didn't specify how many names they drew out. So as they were drawing the names out, they drew Ink's name. Well, it came to an end, and they didn't draw Cheney's. So Ink refused to go fight for the union, and Stoneman said that he couldn't make him go because draw the other twin brothers. So anyway, just a little fact. It was a couple of years ago when I first came to the very first meeting of the Jackson County Historical Association that I attended. And it was a show and tell. And it just made me wonder and see the excitement of the people that brought in their own historical artifacts from their family or something that they found, with the passion that they had of that particular item that they were discussing. Really got me involved in this organization, and I absolutely love it. So thank y'all for having me here today to see about some of the items. What I try to get out of it today, or try to convey to you, are some items that were made during the Civil War, and then I'll try to end up with some of the items that I have found and Ray has found close to here, how you do the research, and a lot of it, I want to go ahead and give credit to Judge Raines for the map that's hanging over there. If he would have donated that to the museum, a lot of this I would not have found, and Reed wouldn't have found. Reed would have ever. But David Kilgore, sitting in the back, he's the one that got me into metal detecting. The love for history started with my dad, tromping around the plow fields in Fackler, Alabama, looking for arrowheads. So with that, I'll start with a couple of items. The first one I'll start with is this short artillery sword. I was discussing it with Gary Morgan, which thank you for reporting this, Gary. I'm used to Gary reporting me every Monday night, so and I have Mr. Kimmer sit beside me to make sure I don't make mistakes. I appreciate it. But this artillery sword, or it's a long knife as well, all the gurus think that it was a Confederate armory made just because of the sheer size, the weight of it, the amount of brass in it. You can actually take it apart. I had someone tell me the other day that back in the Civil War they didn't have screws and all that, and they did. But you can kind of see how much brass they actually used in making that. Closer to the end of the war, with the Confederacy, they didn't have this much brass for that much production. So this would have been half that size, and the sword would have been about half as thick as it is. And after the presentation, you're more welcome to grab one with it. It's a wooden handle, checker, a lot of detail, a lot of thought process. The laws of physics for sure. Because when you get this thing in your hand, you feel how heavy it is. It wouldn't take much to come down with somebody and burn pretty bad. Again, they think that this was a artillery made short artillery. Some of y'all probably know they filled it in with another gun, but it had a 69 caliber muzzleloader in there that belonged to a gentleman named Peter F. Shelton. And that's kind of what started a lot of this process. And I know Kelly loved telling the story. You can continue telling the story too. But the research, you learn as you do, and I learned a lot doing the research with Henry. And there's something I was telling Lauren about it this morning at 11:20 today while I was trying to get all this together, going through what I was going to say today. I got an email from the family. I'll talk about the split family there. That's kind of how it got started. With Henry, he got wounded on the first day of Gettysburg, July 1st, 1863. He was put in the hospital in Virginia. And the means of them getting back was pretty much on a track. You didn't get on the railroad because the majority of those were already taken over by the Union soldiers. So one of my buddies wrote a book, and I donated that today. It's called Taking Southern Trails Home. It's written by one of my friends, Wendy Robertson, who lives right outside of Nashville, Tennessee. And it's a very informative book telling what the veterans went through, or soldiers, on their way back home. And after reading that book, I can only imagine what he went through. For one, he couldn't read or write. Those guys in that story could read. Henry was born in Lincoln County, but after the war, in 1895, he was living in Laura, Tennessee. He filled out a pension paper, and he was denied his pension. He said he deserved. Well, then in 1900, Henry was still living. He was born in 1828. But in 1900, he filled out another pension paper. And thinking of how he found a couple of his officers back then, I had no idea it'd be easy to find them now. But they actually had written letters on his pension papers that Henry deserved the pension. He fought for what he believed in, and he fought gallantly in the battles. And he had a crippled wife, he had a son who was mentally handicapped, and a daughter. And it also stated on his pension papers that the only thing he had about him was a big family. And this was in 1900, so this was several years after the war. But anyway, after going through trying to find where he was buried, Ray and I had gone over there in Tennessee, probably 40, 50 cemeteries looking for him, and never had found him. But found a relative that I had contacted through Ancestry.com, and after meeting, took Ray over there, met her and her great aunt at the cemetery that we fought, and he was buried at. There were 7 unmarked graves. And his daughter was actually buried in the graveyard. And after meeting them and seeing her son Clay, on the way back, Reed asked me, he said, "What's wrong?" Well, after meeting them, and they had done a lot of research on their family. They had a book that they showed me that was about that thick, but it had not covered the shelter side at that particular time. So after talking to them and seeing how passionate they were about finding that part, that history, and I told Reed, I said, this is just a gun to me, but it's part of their history and heritage. If the roles were reversed, I'd want that gun back in my family, and that's the way it happened. So I was glad of that. And they're going to treasure too. They're going to live just as much as I do. And that's part of, I think, our responsibility in some of this is that we're only going to hold these items for a short amount of time. It's teaching the history of it and getting other people involved in preservation. The next item is Memphis Novelty Works. Thomas Leach was the actual owner of the company. Like I said, it was a novelty. They made little novelty items in Memphis, Tennessee, pre-war. During the Civil War, it didn't take long for Memphis to fall after the Fort Donelson in 1862. And this one, you can tell in the high content brass, it's actually shiny. Well, they moved it 3 times. They moved the factory up with they completely closed down the center there in Memphis, and then they moved to Mississippi. And they ended up, they're trying to stay ahead of the Union soldiers, and they ended up in Georgia. And as you can tell, this one is more of a nice shiny brass, which it doesn't have as much zinc content. But these are cavalry swords. They're not big enough. Holy church. But that's it's amazing to me how they forged these, how they went from making novelty little trinkets or whatever to making weapons in war. And it didn't take them long to figure out how to do that. And I know a lot of these items I'm going to show them are Confederate items. I think both sides fought for the war. We have on my side of the family several folks that fought for the Confederacy. can look at this after the presentation, but this is that ancient Roman coin, and I was talking to Gary before the meeting started with the coin. When I saw this on Middle Tennessee Relics website, at first I would have thought it would cost a lot more than what it paid. Larry Hickman, he's the owner of the website. He's been doing it for 40-something years, and his shop's been open for 40-something years. He's been relevant since the late 60s. But this coin was found by Doug River a few years back, and it was in a Confederate encampment during 1863. And I took a picture of it on my phone, and I Googled a gentleman that pulled up ancient Roman coins or whatever, pulled up all this information. I went in there thinking that I was going to be able to identify this with their thousands. So I gave it pretty quick. And so I regenerated it, trying to find someone to contact that could actually tell me what kind of coin this was. And it pulled up an email for a gentleman. His name's Kevin. I sent it to him and asked him if he could just tell me what year this was struck. And he came back and told me that it was a Constantine coin. And of course, that didn't mean a whole lot to me at that particular time. But he wanted me to take a picture of the back of it. He told me the exact year. Well, at that time, he was sitting back and said it was found in a Confederate encampment in the state of Tennessee. And so, but I couldn't, again, the information on the back of it was it looked like it had been made as a pendant or a ring. And so anyway, he sent it back. He said that it was a Constantine era coin, and it was either struck in 330 to 352 AD. So this coin was 1660 years old. And while I was talking to Gary, he made a good point that it could have been a Spaniard or somebody going through that area that dropped it. But while I was doing research on Constantine, he was the first Roman emperor to allow Christianity throughout the whole Roman Empire. And when I was talking to Larry and a couple of those other guys that I speak with pretty often, the Christian faith was very big, and religion was very big, and soldiers got off the board. A lot of times they'd give them Bibles, and they would actually hand sew flags, wherever their company or their state would be, and put it in the flag, or in the Bible. And they blood tokens as well. The face of the coin inscribed the initials of their name or loved one's name. And it's something that we have to think about too, is a lot of times these boys have never gotten one out of their holler or 5 miles from their home. And here we are sending them off 500, 600 miles away, fighting and seeing the flooding border of the war. So that's my thought process, is that it's the Christianity that I'd like to know the travels where this would actually be. More about to look at it after the presentation. Next one is the split family over here. This is another project that probably going to take a lot of time. When I first got this, I bought it because of the knife, and it was from Idaho, South Carolina. And our families, my mom's side of the family is from real close to there. In fact, our family reunions, our family reunions are held in Idaho, South Carolina. And I liked it because I knew it was in point of a side knife, and it came out of the state. Well, the state was Lyman White, which is the gentleman over on the right, and that picture was actually made by Matthew Brady. If you know who that is, he was the one that brought the Civil War to the front of everyone in the newspapers and published and printed. He's the most well-known photographer during that era. But the gentleman at first told me that it was Lyman White's knife, and of course I started doing research on Lyman, and he fought with the 33rd Wisconsin. Well, the gentleman that I got it from called me and said I had a photo album. I don't need a photo album. But he he told me there was a lot of history, and there were a lot of other people, and I was sitting there thinking, man, my wife is going to kill me if I buy a photo album of a family that's not related to me. So I ended up buying it, and found out this gentleman on the left, his name is Colonel James D. Blaney, and it had his picture right beside Lyman White's, which I thought was kind of interesting. But flipping through the book, and this is where I'm getting to today, I got an email. There was a picture of a gentleman in there that had Captain written beside his name, and it was James Dickey McFadden, and his wife was Adelaide Spears McFadden. We got on Ancestry, and I pulled it up and found some family members that were looking for him, or that had him in the family tree, and I found in that view that it was gigantic, the tree was huge. I found James D. Blanding and Lonnie White in it, so they were related, but there was a lot more to it. And I got wind on this the other day that one of the gentlemen that was in there that was named Captain James Dickey, he had a plantation home, and it was called Liberty Hall. Well, on the backs of one of the pictures, it talked about that it was a picture of two little children, and it had written in there that it was that they were from a prominent family in Virginia, and they were kin to the Palmers, Blandings, some French name I can't pronounce, and but they were in that family tree as well, and that they'd gone off to study law for 30 years, and they went to William and Lee College, where General Robert E. Lee was president. And so I was like, oh, I wonder what his name was. So I got on there and found out that George Washington is the one that named the college, but named it Liberty Hall. So I don't know if that has anything to do with why the gentleman named his plantation Liberty Hall or not. I'm getting there. I got an email today from one of the family members, so I got to do a little more studying about that. But that's just intriguing to me about how families were split like that, and I know there's a lot more, brother against brother, and father against son, and all that kind of stuff, but that's close to home. And then another thing I would like for y'all to do is to pass this around. We talked about that a lot of times they walk on foot, and they carry, this is a cartridge box. It's a 69 caliber cartridge box, and I removed the tin that was in there that separated the bullets. But think about what they had to carry and how long they had to walk. And they had the canteens that they filled with water, and had this full of bullets. They had percussion caps, they had the knapsacks, they had all the food, little knickknacks in that as well. And their bedrolls, they had that. But, and I'll get into finding the 97th Indiana here in a little bit, the story about, and Tina put that in the paper as well, where they had marched for several miles, and out of 310 soldiers, 80 of them didn't have boots or shoes, and this was in the dead of winter, and they walked through the snow. So I'll pass it around, feel how big that is. Just think of it, I just carrying that. I don't have this memorized, but the first time it's going back, a lot of these letters over here, I bought, and Judge Raines has the one that has the map, but after reading that, and then reading some other letters that had been written, one, I love the way they have, the way they write and the way they speak. It's not the way we do it now, which we did. But the first time I ever heard this letter, it emotionally killed me. But this is exactly kind of what, finding who it belongs to, the suffering that these men and women went through, and being away from loved ones. And that's something that you can read in a lot of these letters is, first thing I'll say is, hey, Mom and Dad, I'm doing fine. I've written you 10 times, you've only written me once. Where are my letters? So, they were homesick. couldn't imagine leaving my wife and kids behind to go fight. This is a letter that was written, and you may have already heard this, if you had, just bear with me, but it was written on July 14th, 1861. My very dear Sarah, the indications are very strong that we shall move in a few days, perhaps tomorrow, lest I should not be able to write again. I feel impelled to write a few lines that may fall under your eyes when I shall be no more. I have no misgivings about the lack of confidence in the cause in which I'm engaged, and my courage does not halt or falter. I know how strongly American civilization now leans on the triumph of the government and how great a debt we owe to those who went before us through the blood and sufferings of the Revolution. And I'm willing, perfectly willing, to lay down all my joys in life to help maintain this government and to pay that debt. Sarah, my love for you is deathless. It seems to bind me with mighty cables, nothing but noise. And if there be a soft breeze upon your cheek, it shall be my breath, and the cool air fans your throbbing temple, it shall be my spirit passing by. Sarah, do not mourn me dead. Think I am gone, and wait for me, for we shall meet again. And that was written on July the 14th, 1861, and he was killed a week later at the first battle of Bull Run. I'll get it up than that. This is the most, in my opinion, useless weapon of the Civil War, but there's just something that draws you to it because it's kind of like what me and Gary were talking about earlier. You know, these are from ancient times, and the guy I got it from, he said some good things just never end. But when those were put into production, I was going to read something. When they were put into production, the governor of Georgia, that particular pike is called a Griswold pike. And the governor of Georgia, Joe Brown, I hate saying anything about the government back then, especially now, but I still think that they're not engaged with reality because this is a letter that he wrote. He said, to the mechanics of Georgia, the late reserves to which we have attended our arms show that absolute necessity of renewed energy and determination on our part, independence or death, should be our watchword in reply of every free-born Southern South. Our enemies have vastly superior numbers and greatly the advantage of quantity and quality of their arms. We have guns enough for the Confederacy to arm a very large force, but not enough for all troops to have been called to the field. What shall be done in this emergency? I answer. Use the Georgia pike. Let every army have a large reserve armed with a good pike and a long, heavy side knife. Long-range guns sometimes fail to fire and waste hundreds of balls to which it takes effect. But the shortest range pike and a terrible knife, when brought within the proper effect, a proper range, as they can be almost at any moment, and wielded by a stalwart patriot's arm, never fail to fire and never waste a single shot. True, but you're going to die if you carry that in the battle. But I will tell you this, there was I don't know how many of y'all have ever watched the movie Glory. They did a great job of portraying, when the 54th Massachusetts, the color guard, were charging in to take over Fort Wagner, which it was never taken, by the way. But one of the officers of the 54th wrote after that, or at the end of the war, about the pikes and their use. And what the Confederates did was there was a little moat, and in the afternoons the tide would go out, and that's when the 54th decided to charge in on it. Of course, there was big mounds of sand, and as you know, as you walk in the sand, you make imprints. Well, of course, on the sides it wouldn't be as compacted in. What the Confederates did was they dug and hid thousands of pikes into the side. Well, when the 54th went charging in and they made it through the moat, you have to realize the Confederates, what they're shooting down on them, they just dove into the side of that. Well, they impaled hundreds and hundreds of them with those pikes. That'd be a horrible death, and they were really hard. It was used in that case. I knew I'd do something. How heavy these were in carrying them. A lot of times, unless you were riding on a horse and you had a sheep that would do that, I couldn't imagine marching, 20 miles a day carrying this and having to hit you in the leg or whatever. So this and D-guards that the great Joe Brown ordered in the state of Georgia to be made. A lot of times the old roadbeds, and I'll get into researching and how to find relics and all that kind of good stuff, but they would find hundreds of swords like this, D-guards, because they were really useless. If you had a gun, you really didn't need one. What you needed was something like this, which had a big harm if someone came pretty close to it. And then they had these little bitty dirks here, which is, that one has a hard, little brass heart on it, and you can shave it with it. It had a little point. A lot of times, they would carve into, they carve bullets all the time. We found several of those, just to board them or whatever it might be. But I forgot to mention that. But a lot of times they would just chunk those D-guards and swords because they didn't need them. All right, we'll get into the research part. And Ann Chan was going back to what the introduction with him telling me about the research. My dad was great at research and being detailed. Debbie got that, Jeff got it. I didn't learn how to from him. I made myself become that way. But these are some books that were written about soldiers around here. In fact, this one's on loan from the depot that I need to return. But Reuben Williams had written one whole chapter that involved Scottsboro, Alabama. I've read it 20, 30 times. And they talk about, all in all, 1,600 wagon loads of rock, quarter of a mile away. And we still have never found. Not that I don't want to find a rock. I just want to know where they went. But anyway, it's research, and here's back to that. That right there is pretty much, it says X marks the spot. And even though it's very detailed, it was hard for us to find the 97. My honey hole is the 12th Indiana, and that's where it becomes first bullet. But you just can't blindly walk out there and start metal detecting. A lot of people think you can do that, and you can't. There's research involved. And Larry Hickman, which I tell him all the time, he's my mentor, and he just laughs, but he is. He has taught me a lot of, one reason why they camped up here at that particular area behind the creek was because of the northwest wind, especially during the winter time. You think about it, our winter weather usually comes from the west and the north, and so they'd be protected from that. When the sun would come up, the sunlight would hit them. They'd get as much sunlight as they possibly could during the winter time. But and water. The water table back then was a lot higher than what it is today. That's the reason why my honey hole, where the 12th was, which is just right west of here in the field, that water table, that creek was standing in water, and then it came from in. There was a little slope, and everything washed down to that area. I'm going to tell you a funny story. David sitting back there, I found it was an odd looking, and it's right here. It's the one that had the hole in it. It was a lead piece. I knew it was lead. And then I had a brass piece. That was one thing that he told me. He said, never ever throw anything away that has a green patina to it. Well, I was walking out one day and the metal detector went off. I dug up something and it was kind of curved a little bit, and it was the prettiest patina I've ever seen. David said, I throw it away. So I stuck it in my pocket. And I went home and I called him because I was excited about this little lead piece that had a hole in it, and had the other brass piece sitting on top of my counter there at the kitchen. He walked in and he said, you know what that is? I was like, no, look at this. I was pointing down. He went, that's a spur. I found a spur and didn't even know it. So that was part of one. And that was a poker chip. And since then I found several others. So But, and it's just little things like that that you learn as you go by and hang out with a lot of these other guys that have been doing it for a long time. But I really love the history part of it. I want to continue teaching it as well as I possibly can. I'm still learning. As Mr. Kimmer, whenever I used to find a lot of stuff, I bring it to the meetings, and Gary would tell you too. And I'd show it to all the council members and the people that would come in, and just excited about it and all that. That's pretty much my presentation. Gary?
Patrick, you'd mentioned about all this wagon load of rock. You have any more, how many wagon loads did you say?
1,600.
1,500. Any idea where those rock went to?
I think it says east.
Where?
It says east. The west. A quarter of a mile. They hauled it away a quarter of a mile. But I mean, walking through, I've walked everything from over here all the way around pretty much to where the old co-op used to be. And I haven't found any indication that any rock are still there. I've collected them for a really long time. And one of the things that the relic hunters do is they'll do reenactments and all that kind of stuff. And so I threw up one day that I was going to do a reenactment. And Tammy, and I love her to death, she said, well, you're not going to be a Confederate, are you? I was like, why? She was like, well, you're too fat. So I can see the humor in that. And it's the truth. I just feel as though I was anticipating the war and I stocked up. But anyway, I love you. Anybody have any other questions? Thank y'all so much, and I hope